Sure. We have pending litigation in North Carolina right now.
And what?
Challenging their early voting compromise.
And what did that law do?
That law eliminated, I believe, about a week of early voting, similar to Ohio's law.
The other side of this is going to say that Ohio has a lot more early voting hours than many other states, that anybody can mail in their ballot, that nobody's being prevented from voting. How do you respond to that?
They will say that, and that's good. It's good to have more voting hours. Voting should be designed for the convenience of voters, not for the ability of politicians to use elections as part of their voting strategy. More hours, more days is better. In addition, the cuts that were made to the voting hours, the cuts that were challenging in this lawsuit, eliminated hours that were disproportionately used by lower income voters, by African American voters, by single parents, by working voters. So these were not across the board cuts. These were cuts that had disproportionate impact on certain classes of voters.
Has this case been filed already?
Yes, it was filed this morning.
Has it been assigned to a judge yet?
It is assigned according to the complaint to Judge Frost, but we filed this case as a related case because it bears many important similarities to the Obama for America case, which is under the jurisdiction of Judge Economist.
That case is still open?
That case is still pending, yes.
But this is separate from that, correct?
This is an entirely separate filing. It's a separate case. It does have the same defendants. It's challenging similar practices. It's applying similar law. And under the federal and local rules, because of these similarities, for reasons of judicial economy, the same judge should be hearing the same case if he elects to.
Legally speaking, can you say, if they had started off with a system where they designed initially early voting to start 29 days before the election, would they have a stronger case than what they did now legally, to just set it at 35 and reduce it to 29?
You know, I can't, the fact of the matter is that that's not what happened. Ohio created an early voting period in response to the horrendously long lines in 2004. Where hundreds of thousands of people were disenfranchised. And so that is not the situation we're facing today. These cutbacks are discriminatory.
What's the earliest election you hope to, obviously it's too late for May 6th, what's the earliest election you hope to affect with this lawsuit?
The general election that's coming up in November.
Are these voting issues, I mean, it seems like it's always a general election when there's all the question about the early voting and all that sort of thing. Would you be happy with if the state were to strike some sort of deal where they would allow certain things at general election that they didn't, certain hours, certain things at general elections that they didn't at primaries? Not really.
Yeah, well, that's an academic and interesting question. I have to say that waiting times may be different in general elections than in primary elections, and maybe that's what you're thinking about. But we're not really just complaining about waiting times. We're complaining about actual access to voting, actual impediments to people being able to exercise their right to vote, which is equally applicable in primaries and general elections.
But it seems like all the thrust is at the general election level. Why is it that we don't hear a lot of complaining about primaries and access to the polls and the ballots and that sort of thing?
One thing that is kind of important to keep in perspective is the lightning speed at which these cutbacks were put into place. SB 238 was rammed through the legislature, and Secretary of State Husted wasted no time in passing Directive 2014-06 right after SB 38 was put into law, I believe sometime in February. And so we have to keep that in mind as well.
By the same token, we wasted no time in preparing and filing our case, and here it is on the eve of the primary.
Where's your data that minorities or people of color are unfairly disenfranchised?
I would refer you to our complaint, which cites a number of studies. We also pulled data from the county and state databases, and that kind of analysis is going to be discussed in the course of litigation.
Thank you very much. If there are no more questions for the panel, we'll remain and would be happy to talk to you individually.